Hey, what's up? uh, Hi everybody. How you doing? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud, I guess. Today we're studying Daf Memvav, Daf 46 of Masechta Yoma. So Daf Memvav, I guess, starts off discussing the opinion of Rabbi Meir, who says that there is an extra pyre for the limbs of the Korban Tamid that did not manage to get burnt before, the day before, so they can kind of have their own pyre for the next day. We kind of, let's say, deal with that in some way for like the first Amud, kind of. And then, let's just say that. And then there's a separate machlokes about what if you take off some of the coals from the top of the mizbeach and you take them off of the mizbeach, would that be and you extinguish them? Well, actually it's a question if you take them on or off, but whatever. If you extinguish coals from the mizbeach, so, the pasuk says, you can't extinguish the fire of the mizbeach, so we'll discuss that a little bit. So some very, very exciting sugyas. We're going to start on Daf Mem Vav of Masechta Yoma. The second line of Mem Vav Mud Aleph. Omer Rabbi Elazar Mishum Bar Kapara Omer Hoya Rabbi Meir. So says Rabbi Elazar in the name of Bar Kapara that Rabbi Meir's opinion was Evre Ola Sheni Tosru. So if you have limbs of the Korban Ola that were left over, okay, fine, that they didn't get burnt the day before. So you make their own pyre for them, and you put them on that pyre. And Lemaise, that's Reb Meir's opinion from our Mishnah, right? Reb Meir says that every day there were 4 pyres on the Mizbeach, and on Yom Kippur there was a 5th. And what were those 4 pyres every day? There was the main pyre, there was the pyre that they took for the Ketores, the coals for the Ketores, there was the pyre to strengthen the main one, and finally there was a pyre, according to Reb Meir, that they would burn the leftover limbs of the Korban Tamid from the day before. So it says Bar Kapare, exactly that, right? Amar Belaz Mishum Bar Kapare, or Mehayer Reb Meir. That Reb Meir would say every Ola Sheni Tosu, that if you have left over every Ola, the limbs of the Ola from the Korban Tamid, Osalon Ma'arach B'fnei Atzma V'Sodon. So you make your a unique pyre for them on the Mizbeach, and you put them on that pyre. Vafilu b'Shabbos. And secondly, says Bar Kapara, this is even on Shabbos. If you have leftover Korban Tamid from Friday, you would burn them even on a special pyre, even on Shabbos. Okay. So now, my Kamashmal and Tanina. Fact the Gemara, what's Bar Kapara teaching us? At least regarding the first part, that there's a new pyre, a separate pyre for the Korban Tamid that's left over from the day before. Tanina, we learned that in our Mishnah already. Our Mishnah says that according to Meir, every day there were 4 marachos, and as I said a minute ago, one of them was for the leftover limbs of the Korban Tamid. So Reb Avin lo nitzchel lefsulin. So Reb Avin says that what Bar Kapara is teaching us about is limbs of a korban that were pasul and that should not go on the mizbeach, but are pasul to the extent that while they shouldn't go on to the mizbeach, once they're on the mizbeach, you don't take them off. And we're saying that these limbs you would put on, if they were left over, you would put them on on this pyre. Even these pasul limbs, you would put on the pyre. But specifically, if the fire from the day before had already singed them somewhat, at that point, if they didn't get fully consumed, but they were singed and they also were pasul, but only to the extent that you shouldn't put them on the mizbeach milichatchila, but if you did put them on the mizbeach, you wouldn't take them off, and they're singed, and it's the next day, so you put them on the smaller, on this pyre that was designated for the leftover limbs of the animals from the day before. Igadam, the Lozu say, Echad kshen v'echad psulin yimash l'bena or in v'ilolo. Okay, and the Lozu say that it's actually not even necessarily limited to the pasul limbs, but rather all limbs, kosher, pasul, if they're already singed by the fire from the day before, so then you could put them on this additional pyre the next day. But if they were not singed at all, so then you would not put them on this additional pyre. Vafilu b'Shabbos, and Bar Kapara had said that this additional pyre is even on Shabbos, but Tanina, Vayum Chomish. But we already learned in our Mishnah that every day there would be 4 pyres on the mizbeach, one of them being for the leftover limbs, and on Yom Kippur there was a 5th, meaning in addition to the 4, there was a 5th one, and Yom Kippur is like Shabbos, and therefore we're saying that on Yom Kippur there was this 4th pyre for whatever was left over from the day before. So we see that even on Shabbos Memele, there would be this pyre from the day before, for the animals from the day before. So why does Bar Kapar need to teach us this? Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, Rav Acha Bar Yaakov is Gishmak, Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, no? Daf Samach Gimel, Masechta Eruvin. Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, Shani Rav Acha Bar Yaakov the Muflog. He was very unique and very special. Where are we? Rav Acha Bar Yaakov Itzter. Bar Kapara needed to teach us that the 4th pyre is Docha Shabbos, because Haggadat Chamina, I may have thought to say, Anemile Heicha, the Chayom Kippurim Lios Achar Shabbos, the Chav Shabbos Kevin Biyom Kippurim. So Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, I may have thought from our Mishnah that when it says that every day there would be 4 pyres, and on Yom Kippur there would be a 5th, and one of the pyres was for the leftover limbs of the animals from the day before. But I may think that that was specifically when Yom Kippur was on a Sunday. That Chelvei Shabbos Kevin Biyom Kippurim. That the korban of Shabbos you can offer, if it's left over, you could burn it on Yom Kippur. Ava be'emtza Shabbos lo. But if Yom Kippur was in the middle of the week, and the day before was just a weekday, maybe you would not have an additional pyre for the leftover limbs. Chomash Malon, that is what Bar Kapara is teaching us when he says that even on Shabbos there would be this extra pyre, that even if Shabbos falls out, even if Yom Kippur is in the middle of the week, still there would be the extra pyre, and therefore also on Shabbos in general, we see that there would be that extra pyre. Okay. Fine. Amar Rava, says Rava, man haidelo chayish lekimche, uwa. Says Rava, Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, he wasn't paying attention to the wheat that he was grinding. Meaning, like, nowadays we might say something like he fell asleep at the wheel. So, I guess back then they didn't have automobiles. So he fell asleep at the flour mill. Right? So, man haidelo chayish lekimche. Who's this person? Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, he wasn't paying attention to the flour he was grinding. Habuchol yom tnan. It says in the Mishnah every day. Right? It says b'chol yom there would be 4 pyres, and on Yom Kippur there would be a 5th every day, including Shabbos. So why would I think that only when Yom Kippur falls out, or on a Sunday maybe there would be the pyre for the extra limbs, but not in the middle of the week? It says every day. Kasha. So we say l'maisa, it's a question. We've seen before that Rava doesn't necessarily have a problem going after the big guns. Alright, very nice. Although I don't know when Rav Acha Bar Yaakov lived. When did he live? I don't know. Not exactly sure, l'maisa. Let's go weiter. Ufliga de Rav Huna, and this take argues on Rav Huna da Amar Tchilas Udocha Sofa. And Udocha, the Rav Huna says that while slaughtering the Korban Tamid is Docha Shabbos, if you have leftover Korban Tamid from the day before, it would not be Docha Shabbos. So Tchilaso, when you have to offer a Korban Tamid on Shabbos, so you could slaughter it and you can offer it on Shabbos. But if it's Sofo, if it's the end of it, meaning we're talking about the Korban Tamid of Friday, and you already slaughtered it obviously in the afternoon, and now for whatever reason you couldn't burn it on Friday, so now it's left over, it's Sofo, it's the end of it, that would not be Docha Shabbos. Gufa, says the Gemara, to analyze the statement of Rav Huna, that when it comes to the Korban Tamid, it is doche milichatchila, but not doche in the end. My eno doche. So what are we saying that it's not doche? So we were just saying that it's not doche Shabbos, according to Rav Huna. That if you slaughtered the korban tamid in the afternoon on Friday, and now it's Shabbos, and you didn't burn the limbs yet, you would not be able to burn the limbs on Shabbos. That's how we wanted to understand it. But it's taka machlokas. Rav Chizda Amar. Rav Chizda hat gesagt, doches ha-Shabbos v'nedoches ha-Tumah. So if Chizda wants to say, actually no, according to Rav Huna, it would be doches Shabbos l'maaseh. That if you slaughtered korban tamid on Friday, and now it's Shabbos, and you had not yet burned the limbs, so you would be able to burn it on Shabbos. When Rav Huna says that it's not doch at the end, it's talking about Tumah. And what that means is nothing to do with Shabbos. What it means is, obviously we know that there's the concept of Tumah Hutra B'tzibur, Tumah D'chuyahi B'tzibur, right? That basically when there's a communal offering, let's say, so it could be brought, so and if it's Tumah is either Nitche or Hutra, of course we know there's Nafkaminas, it'll actually come up a shtickle in a few minutes, but the Korban Tamid is a Korban Tzibur. It's a Korban that's for everybody, and therefore, if you don't, therefore, if the Kohen who's offering it is Tameh, it's okay. So the question is, what's it okay for? Maybe it's just the blood, the Zrikas Adam, the main thing is throwing the blood on the Mizbeach. So the question is, if you have a Korban Tzibur, like a Korban Tamid, and the Kohen who's offering it is Tameh, does that mean that he's only allowed to do the blood, which is the Tchila, it's the first part, it's the main part, it's the blood? Or maybe even Sofo, maybe even the last part, which is burning the limbs, which isn't necessarily the main part of the Korban Tamid, can you even burn the limbs betum? So what Rav Chizda wants to argue is that the answer is no, according to Rav Huna. That what he's saying is Tchilaso doche, that when you have a Korban Tamid and the Kohen who's offering it is Tameh, so he can offer the blood, he can throw the blood in the Mizbeach B'tumah, but he would not burn the limbs. The Rabba Amar and Rabba hat gesagt, doches hatuma. No, it is doche tuma. That when you have a korban tamid, and the kohen is tameh, so you could do zukas adam, you could burn the limbs. Then a doches a Shabbos, but it wouldn't be doches Shabbos. And therefore, if you have a korban tamid from Friday that was slaughtered ben arbaim on Friday, and they didn't get to put the limbs on the mizbeach, and now it's Shabbos, you would not burn those limbs on Shabbos. Abai says to Rabba, he says, it's a kasha for you, and it's a kasha for Rav Chizda. Kasha l'didach. I'm sorry, where am I? L'didach kasha. It's a question on you. How come? My shnut tuma. Rabba, why do you say that when it comes to tuma, by the korban tzibur, you would do the zrikas adam and the burning of the limbs? B'moado, because it says in the pasuk b'moado, at its proper time, v'afilu b'tumah, and even if you're tameh, you do it, and that's both for the zrikas adam and for the burning of the limbs. Shabbos nami b'moado v'afilu b'Shabbos. Well, we'll say the same thing by Shabbos, that it says that you have to offer the korban tamid at its proper time, and that's even on Shabbos. And therefore, if you have the korban tamid from Friday, that you didn't get to burn the limbs, so burn it even on Shabbos. B'moado v'afilu b'Shabbos. Well, Rav Chizda kasha, and Rav Chizda, I'll ask the same question in the opposite way, which is Mashna Shabbos. How come if you have how come Rav Chizda, he says in explaining Rav Huna that if you have the animal from Friday and you didn't yet burn the limbs, so you can burn them even on Shabbos. Dichsib b'moado, mistamets, because the pasuk says b'moado v'afilu b'Shabbos. Well, tumanami b'moado v'afilu b'tumah. Well, then by tumah also say that, make the same argument and say that you should be able to offer the korban even b'tumah, and that's even burning the limbs. Amalei lo l'didi kasha v'lo l'Rav Chizda kasha. Rabbi says, no, Abaye, it's not a question on me. It's not a question on Rav Chizda. I'll explain. L'didi lo kasha sofu ketchilaso. Rabbi says it's not a question on me because we compare the end to the beginning, Tuma, and therefore when it comes to Tuma, the tchilaso bar midcha Tumahu sofu namidachi. When it comes to Tuma, just like the Zrikas Hadam, Tuma would be doche the Zrikas Hadam, or I guess Dam would be doche the Tuma, right? That you'd be able to throw the blood in the Mizbeach even though the coin is Tameh because it's a Korban Tzibur. So therefore, right, we compare the beginning, the end to the beginning, and just like the beginning, the Zrikas Hadam is doche Tuma, so also the end, the Hector Evarim, the burning of the limbs, is going to be doche Tuma. Whereas Shabbos, however, the Tchilaso lav bar midcha Shabbos, who? Sofonami lo dachi. Whereas when it comes to the Korban Tamid, that it wouldn't be doche Shabbos. What do you mean it's not doche Shabbos? Meaning, this Korban Tamid that you want to burn its limbs on Shabbos, do the sofo on Shabbos, you wouldn't be able to do the first part of it on Shabbos, meaning on Shabbos you're allowed to burn the Korban Tamid of Shabbos, but you can't offer and burn and do everything for the Korban Tamid of Shabbos. But the Korban Tamid of Friday, you would not be able to slaughter it on Shabbos, and even if you slaughtered it on Friday, you wouldn't be able to do the Zrikas Hadam on Shabbos. And therefore, since you can't do the first part of the Korban Tamid of Friday on Shabbos, you also can't do the second part of the Korban Tamid of Friday on Shabbos. But of course, the Korban Tamid of Shabbos you can do on Shabbos. So Shabbos the Tchilas lav bar midcha Shabbos hu sofon amid lo dachi. The Rav Chizda lo kasha, and also according to Rav Chizda it's not a kasha because sofo kitchilas lo leisle, because Rav Chizda does not compare the end, the second part, to the first part, and therefore Shabbos the hutra hi betzibor. Therefore he's not comparing the beginning and the end. Rather he's going based on a different svara, which is hutra betzibor versus the chuya hi betzibor, and therefore Shabbos the hutra hi betzibor. Shabbos that you're allowed to offer, the Korban Tamid on Shabbos. That when it comes to Korban Tzibur, it's hutra, it's mamish mutter. You're mamish 100% allowed to offer the Korban Tamid on Shabbos, and therefore, if you have the limbs left over from Friday, still you're going to be allowed to burn them on Shabbos, because when it comes to the Korbanos Tzibur, it's hutra, it's allowed, and therefore, even though yes, you wouldn't slaughter the Korban Tamid of Friday on Shabbos, but if you slaughtered it before Shabbos, and you did the Zrikas Hadam before Shabbos, and now you need to burn it, that's okay. Because the Korban Tzibur is hutra on Shabbos. So Sofo Nami Dachi Tuma. Fine. No, I'm sorry, Dachi. No, where am I? Yes, exactly. Whereas Tuma, the D'chuya hi betzibur, Tchilaso dikar kapara Dachi, Sofo d'levikar kapara lo Dachi, but Tuma, it argues of Chizda, which is D'chuya hi betzibur. Of course, we know the machlokas between Tuma hutra betzibur versus Tuma D'chuya betzibur. Right? When we say that the Tuma in the context of the tzibur of the congregation is allowed, is it mamish mutter, mamish 100% milichatchila mutter, or is it D'chuya hi, that it's a b'diavad? So it says of Chizda, Tuma betzibur is a b'diavad, and therefore, since it's a b'diavad, so the blood, which is, right, what does he call it? The Ikr Kapara. So then that would be Doche Shabbos. So that would be Doche Tuma. But doing the burning of the limbs, which is not the main thing, so that would not be Doche Tuma, because Tuma T'chuya hi betzibur, it's b'diavad, and therefore whatever you can avoid doing. Therefore the blood, which is the main part of the korban, you can do even b'tuma. But the burning of the limbs, you would not do betuma l'maisa. Zok the Gemara Itmar, it was stated, Hamcha be'esh machto menorah. You have a fellow who's a Kohen, and he takes a coal from on top of the mizbeach to use for the incense or for the menorah, and then he extinguishes the coal. Abaye Omer Chayev, Rava Omer Potter. Abaye says he's Chayev, Rava says he's Potter. If he extinguishes the coal on top of the mizbeach, everyone, Abaye and Rava, both agree that it'll be chayev, because that's pashut extinguishing a coal of the pyre of the mizbeach, of the fire on the mizbeach. And it says, it says, don't extinguish the fire from on top of the mizbeach. And you did it. And you extinguished the fire on top of the mizbeach. So everyone agrees that will be a problem. Ki plige, the machlokas between Abaye and Rava is the achte ha'ara, the kabya. It's when you take it down to the ground and then you extinguish it. Abaye omer chayev eshem mizbeachu. Abaye says you chayev because, after all, it's fire from the mizbeach and you extinguished it. Rava omer potter came in the nitka, whereas Rava says potter because once already you removed the fire from the mizbeach. And as we're going to see in a minute, maybe the fact that it's in the context of a mitzvah davka is significant, but Rava wants to argue that the coal is no longer sort of attached to the mizbeach and associated with the mizbeach, so to speak, and therefore you will be potter for extinguishing it. Ela hada amar of Nachman am Rabbi bar Avua. But what about the following statement of Rav Nachman and the name Rabbi bar Avua? Demor hamorid gacheles me'agabe mizbeach v'chiba. If you have a fellow who takes down a coal from on top of the mizbeach and extinguishes it, chayev, right? So meaning if he takes it down from on top of the mizbeach and then he extinguishes it, he's chayev. So come on, who would that be like, Abaye or Rava? So Abaye. Sounds like Lemaisa that would be like Abaye, because Abaye says, where we said everyone agrees that if the coal is on top of the mizbeach, you'll be chayev. It's when you take the coal down from the mizbeach. Abaye says you're chayev, Rava says you're potter. And Rav Nachman says the name Rabbi bar Avua that if somebody takes a coal from on top of the mizbeach and brings it down, you're going to be chayev. It's like Abaye. So if you take a Rava, says the Gemara, the Maisa, you can even say that Rava would agree with Rav Nachman named Rabbi bar Avua. Rav Nachman, after all, was the Rebbe of Rava. Hasam lo intik lemitzvah acha intike lemitzvah. At least one of the Rebbeim of Rava. When it comes, right, so Rava is going to say that there's a difference. What Rav Nachman is saying that in Rabbi bar Avua, that if somebody stam takes a coal from on top of the mizbeach and brings it down and extinguishes it, yeah, you're going to be chayiv. Rava says, totally agree. Where Rava says he's potter is because in this specific case you removed it for the purpose of a mitzvah, for the ketores, for the menorah, and therefore once you remove it for the intention of a mitzvah and you take it off of the mizbeach, at that point if you extinguish it, you'll be potter. But, says Rava, I agree with Rav Nachman, the name Rabbi bar Avua, that if you remove it from the mizbeach, stam, and extinguish it, you'll be chayiv. Ikadamar, those who said the achte ha'ara v'chabed d'chuli amalo pligi de potter. Those who explain the machlokas between Abaye and Rava is that both Abaye and Rava agree that if you take the coal off of the mizbeach and bring it down to the ground and then extinguish it, you're going to be potter. Abaye and Rava agree you're going to be potter. Where they argue is when you extinguish it on top of the mizbeach. Abaye says you're going to be chayev because it's fire from on top of the mizbeach on top of the mizbeach. Rav Amar potter came with the nitka. Rav says you're going to be potter because once you have removed the coal from the fire, so then you're going to be potter. Right? It's no longer connected to the fire of the mizbeach. Come on. But then when Rav Nachman says the name Rabbi bar Avua, that if somebody takes a coal from on top of the mizbeach and brings it down to the floor, he's going to be chayev. So who's that like? Lo Abaye v'lo Rava. It's like neither Abaye nor Rava, because we just said that according to this way of understanding the machlokas between Abaye and Rava, everyone agrees that if you take down the coal to the ground, you're going to be potter. Rabbi bar Avua says you're going to be chayev. So, awesome lo intik lemitzvah, ocha intik lemitzvah, but you can answer in the same way. No, Abaye and Rava would agree with Rav Nachman, the name Rabbi bar Avua, because Rav Nachman is talking about a situation where he did not remove it with the intention of a mitzvah, and that's why you'll be chayev. Whereas in this case, he's removing the coal with the intention of a mitzvah, and he brought it down to the ground, so that's why you're going to be potter according to them, because you already separated it from its source in the mizbeach. Chevra, That was Daf Mem Vav. I feel like it wasn't actually a easy daf. I wouldn't say that. The first part was a little complex, but I feel like it was a little bit quicker, at least, than some of the dafim we've been experiencing recently. But bigadol, Yoma is a geshmak alimud, no? So, to recap. So, we started off the daf with a statement of Amar Balazar, Amar Bar Kapara, who said two things about the opinion of Rav Meir. A, that Rav Meir would say that you would burn the leftover limbs from the day before on its own pyre on the mizbeach. And number two, that this would be done even on Shabbos. The thing is that we kind of knew both of those statements already. So, one way to explain what Bar Kapara was teaching us is that he's saying that even limbs that are puzzle, the type of limbs that are puzzle, that you shouldn't put them on the mizbeach, but if you do, you don't take them off. So those even you would burn on their own kind of pyre the next day if they're left over. But as long as they were already singed the day before, and those who say actually that the thing about being singed from the day before isn't actually limited to the puzzle limbs, but actually any limbs, puzzle limbs, kosher limbs. If they were singed the day before, you could burn them the next day on their own pyre, but if they weren't singed, then you would not. And then discussing the point of Bar Kapara that it's Docha Shabbos, don't we already know that it's Docha Shabbos? Because the Mishnah says that every day there would be these 4 pyres, and even on Yom Kippur there would be a 5th one, meaning including the 4, including the pyre for the leftover animals from the day before. So Yom Kippur is like Shabbos, so we already know that it's Docha Shabbos. So Rav Acha Bar Yaakov says, look, I may have thought from the Mishnah that only when Yom Kippur is on a Sunday, so basically you'd be burning the limbs from the day before, which was Shabbos. So it's the limbs of Shabbos being burned on Yom Kippur, and that's okay. But what if Yom Kippur falls out in the middle of the week? Maybe I wouldn't know that you can, that there would be this additional pyre. So that's what Bar Kapara is teaching us. Rava says, I don't know about that. After all, the Mishnah does say Kol Yom, every single day, and therefore, and therefore he doesn't know about that. It says Kasha. He says an interesting phrase, Rava. He says he wasn't paying attention to the wheat he was grinding. Rav Huna then said, or not then said, but this goes against Rav Huna, who says that while the first part of the Korban Tamid is Docha Shabbos, well, Kilu, on Shabbos you could offer Korban Tamid, but the Korban Tamid from Friday, if you didn't get to burning its limbs before Shabbos, you would not burn the limbs on Shabbos. Then we actually saw that what Rav Huna says is actually machlokas between Rabba and Rav Chizda. That when Rav Huna says that the end is not Docha Shabbos, what's that talking about? So Rabba learns it like we were learning it, which is to say that, it's not, that burning of the limbs is not going to be Docha Shabbos. Rav Chizda says that actually it's talking about something completely different. In terms of Shabbos, the extra limbs would be Docha Shabbos. But what it's saying is that in the context of Tumah, when we say that you're allowed to offer a Korban B'Tumah, that would only be, according to Rav Chizda explaining Rav Huna, that would only be the blood you can offer B'Tumah, but the limbs you would not offer B'Tumah. Okay? And then we got into the interesting machlokus between Abaye and Rava about extinguishing a coal from the mizbeach. Meaning, if you're not allowed to extinguish coals from the mizbeach, because it says that you're not allowed to extinguish the coals from the mizbeach. What if you took some coal from the mizbeach for the ketores or for the menorah, and then you extinguish it? Abaye says you're going to be chayv. Rava says you're patur. And the question is, what exactly is the context? We had 2 ways of understanding it. The first way of understanding it is that we're talking about on the floor of the you took it down from the mizbeach already. If it was on top of the mizbeach, everyone agrees you'd be chayv. But once already you took it down from the mizbeach, Abaye says you're going to be chayv because it's still considered fire from the mizbeach. Rava says, look, at this point you already separated it. But then the kasha was, then how do you understand the question of how do you understand Rav Nachman's opinion, which is that somebody who takes down a coal from the mizbeach is going to be chayv? It sounds like it's like Abaye. We say no, it can even be like Rava, because when Rava says that you're patur, it's only because you separate it specifically for a mitzvah, but Rav Nachman's talking about when you just take a coal down, you'd be chayv. The other way to understand it is that Abaye and Rava both agree that on the floor you'd be patur, because it's separate already. But on top of the mizbeach, Abaye says chayv and Rava says patur. Rava would say patur because since you already separated it, it's considered separate. What about Rav Nachman? The name Rabba Bar Vu says that when you take down a coal from the mizbeach, you'll be patur, you'll be chayv. It sounds like neither like Rabba or Rava. no, I'm sorry, Abaye or Rava. Abaye said no. We would agree with Rav Nachman that you'd be chayev, because Rav Nachman's talking about where you didn't take it down for a mitzvah, where here we're talking about where you took it down for a mitzvah, so therefore once it's off the mizbeach, you'd be chayev. No, if you took it off for a mitzvah, then once you take it down from the mizbeach, you'd be potter. Rav Nachman's talking about when it's not for a mitzvah, therefore you'll be chayev. Have an awesome day. Cheers.